Hello, everybody. Let me introduce you to Matilde Fontanin from University La Sapienza, Rome.
And to Gabriela SECCARDINI from University Gustave Eiffel in the Paris area.
Our contribution tackles the problem of embedding information and media literacy in an English class on a master's level. Starting from this issue, we,
a librarian with a background in English,
and a teacher of English for special purposes,
have started a reflection together on how to improve students' motivation and implication in critical thinking.
We also wanted to explore on the benefits of a collaboration of a subject expert teacher and a librarian teaching together to foster critical attitudes to information, be it curriculum related or not.
We both agreed that interactive problem-solving activities in class are more successful than traditional one-to-many approach. And we had discussed the rationale of guided inquiry, the model devised by Coulthard, Maniotis, and Kasperi, which I had previously used.
Above all, we discussed the concept of the third space. Students are more involved when they perceive that what they are doing in class is close to their real experience. We wanted to discover how far this has been tested and what are the best activities to offer to students.
We identified two main questions that also gave the structure to our article. The first part of the paper moves from a literature review to answer research question 1, which is if there is evidence of course experiences at higher education level which take into account the third space approach, and whether they actively involve librarians or not. To answer this, we conducted a literature review on two databases. Eric focused on education and Lisa on library and information science.
The second question builds on the results of the first. If learning is enhanced when the third space is activated, that is, when students see the connection between curriculum and real life, could the workshop presented at Bobcats 2020 represent the opening for an effective learning experience? To answer this, the workshop is described, observed from both our viewpoints.
To answer research question 1, we searched databases for fake news combined with a set of other keywords. The search sifted for articles in higher education, namely experiences of courses in information literacy and critical thinking that address fake news. Then we selected those based on collaboration between librarians and teachers. Among those, we searched for the presence of the guided inquiry model or of the third space. What definitions of critical thinking, fake news, information literacy emerged? Here follow some key points. Critical thinking is prerequisite to active citizenship. Civic online reasoning is based on lateral reading, which means the context should be analyzed before actually using any online content. Civic engagement is another issue, and it means that people are willing to face social or political challenges in their communities. At academic level, the germ of critical thinking is the formulation of a research question. This means students must evaluate critically also the theories and references offered by their own teachers. As regards fake news, all articles date the concept to 2016, Oxford English Dictionary Word of the Year, Brexit, the US election campaign. We're almost tired of hearing that. It is worth underlining that the opposite of fake news, it's not facts. It's not facts, however, but facts are twisted by bias. They can be made a rhetorical weapon. The success of fake news has psychological grounds. It depends on the confirmation bias. People stick to their biases as long as the latter allow them to feel part of a community. So the presentation of contrarian information, no matter how accurate, will simply cause them to retain what confirms their bias and disregard the rest. Moreover, things already heard will sound familiar, therefore accepted, no matter if true, especially because belonging with the tribe is stronger than rationalizing. Information literacy is a plural concept. We search for information, media, and digital literacy. Some propose it become an academic core topic. It has much to do with learning how to ask epistemological questions, to doubt about all sources. It implies becoming aware of the nature and language used in the discipline studied as well. Literature showed that librarians' involvement is not the rule, and often it's simply a one-shot session, which has poor results. Yet, when the involvement is deeper, goals are achieved. Communication should be improved between teachers and librarians, for example, to harmonize their standard tools. If librarians have the CRAAP test, health professionals have credible. Presenting together demands synthesis. No matter how many events libraries organize, the best results come from working in class with faculty. When students can use what they are learning to answer the real needs, to write an essay, for example, information literacy is truly meaningful. In class, librarians can bring added value. They may adapt source evaluation and text analysis to enhance course goals. When students in an earth science course confused opinion columns and investigative pieces, a librarian could step in. While in the humanities, the issue is discipline related, a science course might have different priorities. Librarians are often involved in the curation of data and institutional repositories. They might show students how to take advantage of those skills for their careers. The best results come from long-time collaboration with clear goals. Some articles offer ideas. A semester-long scaffolded, blended online activity. The use of iterative peer-to-peer process. Editing discipline-related Wikipedia entries. At a School of Medicine, librarians and faculty together managed to increase students' competence in finding answers to clinical case questions, sifting through literature. Projects with the local community are beneficial, especially for students from disadvantaged backgrounds. They might lack certain knowledge foundations, but they are no strangers to complexity. They can work on their strengths. The purpose of guided inquiry design is to teach how to form an answer to a deep research question. It moves from stimulating curiosity to increasing motivation in the open phase. No task is set. Rather, a topic is presented in a way that stimulates learners to ask deep research questions and eventually have them look for the answers. Since it involves the emotional sphere, it might be effective against the psychological side effects of misinformation. A motivated, involved learner might be willing to listen deeply. Third space is hardly mentioned in the articles. Neither is the guided inquiry design, yet many of the experiences are based on similar learning principles. Some articles show examples of reality-based approach. Prospective doctors and social workers analyze individual cases to develop critical thinking skills. Science and engineering students face historical disasters to enhance their sense of responsibility as to the consequences of their work on the environment. Students of journalism and STEM work together to raise the science and news literacy of both groups. So, back to question 1. Any evidence at higher education level, of course, experiences with the third space approach of librarians' involvement? The answer is there is not much evidence of the third space. Instead, there is plenty of evidence of teaching critical thinking to face fake news, and that linking curriculum to the real world and solving real problems is actually successful. Librarians are mentioned more often than third space, but their involvement is not crucial. When they are more involved, though, the learning experience is successful.
The research question 2 was to put literature findings into practice and verify the effectiveness of the workshop presented at Bobcats 2020 in a real class. For the time being, the answer will have to be put on hold because of the pandemic prevented the experience. I will describe and relate some impressions on selected activities, but their value is simply an example and a starting point for a deeper reflection. Bobcats 2020 conference was due in January. In the months before that, I organized a couple of lessons on fake news and information literacy in 2 business English classes for year 1 and 2 of the Master in Competitive Intelligence at IFES, Université Gustave Eiffel. I chose these 2 classes because they were involved in organizing the event, therefore deeply into the subject. We started with a warm-up activity that consisted to collaboratively write a word cloud on the whiteboard, starting from the phrase fake news. Then we worked on defining all the words and expressions using online dictionaries and other reputed online sources. The following activity was to reflect on the way fake news spread. We did that first discussing a quote often attributed to Mark Twain. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes. After, the class watched the short TED-Ed animation lesson, How False News Can Spread, which focuses on the concept of circular reporting. The interesting side of these activities is that the general questions become personal, and students can reflect on their own experiences. A further activity, much loved by students, was Fake Out. This is an interactive course on fact-checking literacy. It starts with a quiz where respondents have to decide whether 10 news items are real or fake, and whether they would repost them. Once the quiz is finished, the module shows 3 short videos illustrating 3 main validation skills: how to quickly check and reflect on the headlines, the source, and the images. After that, students take a new quiz, this time accompanied by a tutorial that explains all the elements to pay attention to. As follow-up activities, students had to work on 2 home assignments: 1 group presentation and a more personal reflective writing assignment. First, each student had to identify a claim from a current news story and check it using the strategies discussed in class. For the Bobcats workshop, my priority was to offer the audience more hands-on fake news, at the same time applying information literacy teaching. This time, though, the audience was composed mostly of people in the library and information science field, students, teachers, and professionals. I chose to work on a different kind of fake news, fake reviews in the accommodation and restaurant industry. Why this choice of the tourist sector? In recent years, social media influence on choices of tourist destination, accommodation, and restoration has greatly increased. With social media feeds, glossy Instagram pictures, and customers' reviews. Therefore, information literacy and critical thinking in these fields are essential skills to develop, besides being an interesting, quite new field of research. Furthermore, business decision-making is more and more based on consumers' reviews, so that huge economic interests are at stake when dealing with false reviews created by fraudulent businesses. So the workshop was meant to provide food for thought, raise awareness on how online fake reviews shape offline popular perceptions and narratives in this sector of activity. After a warm-up around the concept of Blue Monday, the core of the workshop was a group activity in which each group had to set up a fake restaurant, cafe, or tourist resort. and devised a social media strategy for it. They had to use all the marketing techniques, social media tools, and oratory skills that they knew to convince their prospective customers. Participants were provided a worksheet that you can see on the slide with useful points to reflect and work on. Name, place, short description, means of promotion, and on which social media, slogan, pictures, videos, how to get reviews, and who was going to write the reviews. The groups reflected and discussed for 1 hour. Then each group presented a project and social media strategy. The purpose was to have them reflect on creating a fake business and collect their comments. While designing this activity, which the audience enjoyed, I had in mind the social experiment led by journalist Uba Butler in 2017. In an 18-minute video, Butler explains how he brought a totally made-up restaurant to #1 in London on TripAdvisor. We watched together a few extracts from the video, especially those describing how Butler duped his followers, created charming images, fake reviews, and even received a PR offer to represent his business. Showing this documentary after the activity was extremely effective, as the groups, more than being amused, could compare their own experience. As a conclusion, I asked the audience to discuss and come up with a checklist how to avoid to be fooled by fake reviews. As I teach English communication in a master in tourism, the choice of proposing to work on fake reviews in the restaurant and tourist industry initially started as an idea to insert the workshop in their curriculum. Eventually, this topic proved interesting even for non-specialists of the sector, since the topic and communication tools are close to the students' experience in the real world, being tourists and using social media. The least participants' feedback, collected via an open discussion, was that it had been extremely entertaining and involving to step outside their usual area of interest and discuss the effect of critical thinking on real-world situations. Moreover, such a workshop could build the basis for a transcurricular activity to build a critical thinking attitude to different subjects. In fact, it is not to be taken for granted that critical thinking in a field will be transferred to another automatically. As we have already said, a thorough answer to the research question 2 will have to wait, as the pandemic preventing experimenting. However, there are still a few points that we have learned.
Cooperation between librarians and subject experts would be beneficial to the learners, as they take advantage from professionals with different but complementary expertise. After all, materials produced by libraries freely available on the internet were deemed useful by Gabriela in her lessons on fake news and information literacy. On the other hand, she brought a totally fresh vision to teaching, linked to everyday life, the social media, and approach likely to increase attendance involvement.
As usual, I applied techniques that are appropriate to language learning and the constructivist approach, starting from warm-up sessions to raise curiosity and increase motivation, and moving on to hands-on activities, cooperation, and group communication, which activate the attention. This is what Skolthaus, whose work I didn't previously know, referred to as open phase.
Yet, to draw conclusions on how effective this is in the light of information literacy and critical thinking, further activity would be needed. For example, embedding a librarian in the course to work on documental resources and deepen students' knowledge on the organization of information. Hopefully, there will be the opportunity to do so in the future.
A deeper understanding of text analysis and lateral reading could be stimulated by our different points of view. Moreover, since contemporary society is image-oriented, image literacy skills represent a fundamental part of wider critical thinking competencies. Nevertheless, the cooperation and reflection on the topic will continue, as fake news, disinformation, and critical thinking in the sector of tourism, but not only, will still be up to date. Thank you.